Brilliant Bridges. Written by Kay Barnum. Illustrated by Laszlo Verez.
Bridging the gap. Bridges carry people and vehicles across rivers, roads, railways and valleys. They make it easier to travel from one place to another. Bridges come in different shapes and sizes. Before a bridge is built, engineers think about what type of gap it's going to cross and what it will be carrying: cars, trains, people, or water. Then they work out the best type of bridge for the job and the best materials to use. The Millau Viaduct in France carries a motorway across a wide valley. It's one of the tallest bridges in the world. Arch bridges. The very first bridges were built thousands of years ago. They were fallen trees or stone slabs laid across streams. The bridge takes the weight of the people crossing over. The ground carries the weight of the traffic and the bridge. These bridges were good for crossing small gaps, but they broke if the traffic was too heavy or the bridge was too long. So about 3,500 years ago, the arch bridge was invented to cross wider gaps. The bricks in the arch are shaped to squeeze together and support each other. The arch moves the weight of the traffic and the bridge down to the ground. The ground carries the weight of the traffic and the bridge. If a stone arch is too wide, it becomes too heavy and falls down. To cross bigger gaps, engineers built bridges with a set of smaller arches. This spread the weight evenly across the structure. Now they could build much longer bridges. Did you know? The Pont du Gard aqueduct was built in France over 2,000 years ago. It supplied the city of Nîmes with 200 million litres of water every day. The piers move the weight of the traffic and the bridge down to the ground. The ground carries the weight of the traffic and the bridge. Building on bridges. Between 250 and 1,000 years ago, many stone arch bridges had houses and shops on top of them. This was a way of fitting more buildings into crowded cities. The Ponte Vecchio in Florence, Italy, is lined with jewellery shops. So many buildings were squeezed onto Old London Bridge that flames could easily leap between them, and many people died in fires. So, in 1756, they decided to take the bridge down and build a new one without buildings. Old London Bridge's 19 arches caused traffic jams on the river as boats queued to sail through the narrow gaps. Wooden bridges. About 150 years ago, engineers raced to build railways across the USA so people could travel easily between the east and west coasts. Wooden bridges could be built quickly and cheaply because engineers could use trees growing near the railway. instead of transporting stone or metal from elsewhere. These bridges were made by crossing pieces of wood and tying them together. Big wooden supports spread the weight of the train evenly across the bridge. These bridges are perfect for crossing deep gaps because they can be very tall. But wooden bridges don't last as long as stone bridges. Wood can rot, it's a fire risk, and it's not as strong as stone. Most wooden bridges have been replaced with bridges made from longer-lasting materials. The trestles move the weight of the traffic and the bridge down to the ground. The ground carries the weight of the traffic and the bridge. Metal bridges. About 150 years ago, a new metal material called steel was invented, and this changed bridge design. Stone is strong under pressure, but steel is strong when it's stretched too. Steel is so strong that much less is needed, so steel bridges weigh less than stone bridges. Steel bridges could be longer, stronger, bigger and better than ever before. The Sydney Harbour Bridge in Australia is made of steel. Did you know? Even some metal bridges didn't last. The Tacoma Narrows Bridge in the USA was opened in 1940. During high winds in the same year, it wobbled and twisted so much that it snapped. Suspension bridges. In 1831, Isambard Kingdom Brunel designed one of the first suspension bridges. Suspension bridges are like arch bridges, but upside down. Suspension bridges can be longer than any other kind of bridge, so they are ideal for bridging huge gaps, such as wide rivers. Two long cables run from one end of the bridge to the other over two towers. These cables are held in place by weights at both ends of the bridge. The deck hangs from wires attached to the cables. Many suspension bridges are built from steel and concrete. The weights help to support the bridge. The ground carries the weight of the traffic and the bridge. The weight of the traffic moves from the deck through the wires, cables and towers and down to the ground. Cable-stayed bridges. Cable-stayed bridges were also built in the 1800s. They might look like suspension bridges, but they're different. In a suspension bridge, a cable is held in place by weights at each end of the deck. But in a cable-stayed bridge, the deck hangs from lots of cables attached to the towers. The ground carries the weight of the traffic and the bridge. These bridges can be quite long and are used where there is no way of holding up the bridge at either end. The weight of the traffic moves from the deck, through the cables and towers, and down to the ground. The Ursund Bridge carries trains and cars between Denmark and Sweden. The middle of the bridge is cable-stayed. It's wide enough to allow ships to sail underneath. The rest of the bridge just has a deck supported by piers, which was cheaper to build. Did you know? The Ursund Bridge, completed in 1999, is the longest road and rail bridge in Europe. It's 7.8 kilometers long. Bridges of the future. As technology improves, engineers dream of bridging even wider gaps. The Bering Strait is an 85-kilometer wide sea that separates Asia from North America. No one has designed a bridge yet that could link the two continents. It would have to be the longest bridge ever. It would have to be tough enough to cope with ice. It would have to be high enough to avoid waves, and workers would have to build in very dangerous conditions. But one day, it may be possible. Engineers imagine that a Bering Strait bridge might look like this. It would be longer than 10 ursund bridges, and would take about an hour to drive across.